right, so we've gone about a 5-minute drive north of the JJ Pickle Research Lab, and we are at sort of a corporate campus here for IBM. And we're here because IBM is a crucial player in the space of digital identity, increasingly tied to health passporting systems. They were the platform that was being used in the Excelsior Pass, which is the vaccine passport initiative that is underway in the city of New York with Governor Cuomo. And it's important to understand the trajectory of IBM in sort of cybernetic social management. And many people know it goes back to the Hollerith cards tied to the Holocaust, but what a lot of people are not as familiar with is the fact that IBM technology underpinned the pass system that was linked to Apartheid South Africa, which I think in many respects is actually more relevant in current conditions of geofencing. So biosecurity state geofencing linked to software platforms. Just a bit of background about IBM in Austin. Austin was very intentionally developed as a technology center starting in the late 1950s. There are a number of influential individuals that got together in 1957 to cultivate technology companies to bring them specifically to Austin. And so today there are many major employers that are technology based. IBM is the third largest technology employer after Dell and Samsung, and so they're a major force in the city. They initially started their first big factory here in 1967, and it was to manufacture Selectric typewriters. And then from then on into the 80s, they started to do microchip processing and personal computing, and then have moved since into these larger sort of systems data analysis sets. Now, the other piece that is important to understand about IBM, it is very central to the push for electronic government and efficiency around health and human service delivery, social welfare delivery, educational technology data systems. And I remember coming across the use of AI in all of these spaces, often to very negative effects, where algorithms were put in place that would flag people within the social welfare system as non-compliant, which was not the case. Same with AI in healthcare records. The results were pretty terrible, actually. And so, but even so, because data is the new asset class, data is the new oil, things are proceeding apace, especially with the global biosurveillance society setting in. Relating to the educational database centers that were down in the Pickle Research Lab with the Supercomputing Center, it's important to know that IBM actually partnered with Sesame Workshop to create tablet-based educational delivery systems that were then piloted on Syrian refugee communities with support of the MacArthur Foundation. It was part of their 100 and change grant with the International Rescue Commission. And so they got together with the Nudge Unit, the Behavioral Institute unit of the UK, and they were trying to place these digital learning tablets into homes of dispossessed refugees from Syria and get those children online for their educational tracking. And then a lot of it was also about tracking their families in connection with the children's educational delivery. So there were a lot of concerns about that. And so most people are not, like, they would think, well, what does like a pilot program in with refugee populations in Jordan have anything to do with Austin, Texas? Well, IBM has incredible tentacles, and then once they get everyone on the blockchain tied into these medical passporting systems, they can start to layer in programmable benefits that include education, food assistance, housing assistance, and many other things that are tied to behavioral compliance. And so if we back this out into knowing the history of this company, both with not only the Holocaust, but the apartheid systems, that we can see how a technocratic approach to government, while they may be pitched as accountable and transparent, is also very incredibly dehumanizing and very much in line with patterns of domination. And I will say, ironically, we've chosen this location on the campus to do this filming because there's a giant construction project across the way that is, we're seeing around us Amazon services, Charles Schwab, which is investing, New York Life, which is insurance. So these are all related to making bets on people's lives and managing them as data. But the name of the corporate development is actually Domain. right? So we have the domain, but yes, multiple units that are, it's a regionally developed corporate campus called the domain. So we've got domination across from, in partnership with IBM potentially, and that's that's sort of the landscape of this space. And so that just lays out, oh, the one last thing I did want to say is that in Austin at the onset of the COVID pandemic being announced, that they were working very closely with the city government to develop chatbots that would facilitate information sharing with the Austin population. So the city itself, in addition to being one of these very smart cities that is involved in a lot of what works data management, that IBM was doing test cases with these chatbots in terms of government facilitation. So increasingly, you're going to have not direct access to your government services, actual individual people, and you will be mediated through these layers of technology that are corporatism. And in my sense, that if we are not very careful, handing over electronic government to these corporations so that we may have a fiction that we have people elected and accountable, but really it's being run by algorithms, is really, really troubling as we increasingly start to live in a planetary computer.